Welcome to Speak Out. I'm Sandy Galef, a member of the New York State Assembly, representing parts of Northern Westchester and parts of Putnam County. And today we're going to talk about the most important thing in our lives, and that's helping other people with their lives. And we have today two guests that are going to give us a lot of good information about how we can save lives. And first I have McSherry, who is the Senior Public Relations Specialist with LiveOn New York.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and LiveOn New York is all about
organ donation. We are the federally designated nonprofit tasked with overseeing donation and transplantation in the greater New York City area.
You're doing a great job, just a great job. And we also have Janet Ocasio. And Janet, you're an organ recipient, yes, but also you work with the Transport Support Organization.
The Transplant Support Organization.
I'm sorry, Transplant.
Okay.
And we're going to talk a little bit in a few minutes about your experiences receiving an organ. But I thought what we do to open up the program is we have just a very short video that kind of explains I guess LiveOn New York and organ donation. So maybe we'll start with that and then we'll come back. Okay, so let's watch that video.
Organ donation is quite remarkable. It brings life to those whose lives are in peril. It brings comfort, pride, and even joy to those who are saddened by loss. It enriches the legacy of those who selflessly give. We, LiveOn New York, are the guardians of this remarkable cause for the 13 million New Yorkers we serve. With warmth, positivity, and expertise, we champion it. We are clinicians, educators, social workers, and more who believe in and are united around the amazing power of donation. With passion and perseverance, day and night, 365 days a year, we work to ensure that the impact of organ and tissue donation reaches its full potential for this great community we serve. In doing so, we bring comfort, we help strengthen legacies, and we help save lives. We are LiveOn New York, and we help New Yorkers and New York live on.
There's so many wonderful stories about people giving and helping others and to make sure that somebody else can continue a wonderful life. So that was just a wonderful video to pull us all together. Janet, why don't we talk about you? You were an organ recipient, yes. So you were helped by somebody else?
Absolutely. I received a liver transplant in 1998. So this past October, I celebrated 20 years of life with the thanks of a donor who donated, a teacher from Albany who donated her liver. However, you know, I always say to people that transplant is a journey, a very long and difficult journey. And I waited for 12 years to receive my liver transplant. I was on a waiting list. Actually, the day that I learned that a transplant could possibly save my life, I also learned about the waiting list. And I learned how long it would be. I learned that people die on the waiting list. So it was like a double-edged sword, you know. They tell you, we have a cure for you, we have something that we can do to save your life, but by the same token, because of the shortage of organs, because people don't register to be organ donors as much as they should, people are waiting on waiting lists. So I was diagnosed when I was just 30 years old, and I was a young mother with 3 children that were all in school, different ages, and I had just given birth to my youngest son. And unfortunately, I developed an autoimmune disease, which was incurable. There was no treatment for it, and it was progressive and would be fatal. At first, transplant was not an option. I was basically told that I had an incurable deadly disease. But, because of the advances in transplant medicine, I eventually was able to access transplant as an option for myself. And so I was put on the waiting list. And the years went by, and I was working and raising my family. And
did it become a health issue as you went along in that waiting process?
in the beginning, I did have some health issues, which is what led me to the doctors initially. But then things got better. But I could see that there was a decrease in my functioning over time. And I always say to people, when you're waiting for a transplant and you know that if you don't get it, you're going to die, it's like having a sledgehammer hanging over your head all the time. You think about it every day, especially when you have children and you have a family. I was a social worker, so I had a job that I loved. And I wanted my life to continue. I was a young woman at that time. But, there just was no way of accessing an organ until I was one of the sickest people on the waiting list. And
so it's somewhat of a triage, I guess?
Yes.
Because as you get worse and worse, you rise to the top of the list.
On the list. And it wasn't until I had ended up in ICU, I had very serious complications, that, my doctors approached my family and said, we've got to find an organ for her immediately or she's not going to survive. And I'm one of the, I was very lucky. I mean, I waited all those years, but I consider myself very lucky that I had the opportunity. And I've lived 20 years, and I've seen all of my children graduate. They're all doing really well. I have a son who works for Google, a son who went to West Point. My daughter's a real estate agent. I have grandchildren. I got to go to all their weddings. I got to see my grandson born. All of those things that I would not have experienced had it not been for the generosity of my donor.
Right. Do you have any idea who your donor was?
I don't know specifically. I did exchange letters with her sister for a while after my transplant. She was a teacher in Albany. She it's interesting, the story, because she was a young mother of 3 children, and coincidentally, our children were the same ages.
Oh my goodness, wow.
And she was involved in a motor vehicle accident on the morning of my transplant, and she was declared brain dead. But she had decided to become an organ donor, and so she donated all of her organs and saved 8 lives as a result. I was the lucky recipient of the liver. And when I received that transplant, I knew I had gotten a gift, and I had incurred a tremendous debt, because how could you repay somebody for doing something like that with a total stranger? She saved my life, and I was able to move on with mine. And it's sad and it's happy at the same time.
Right. And you're here to make sure that you're helping other people in the same situation.
Absolutely.
Right. So, Allie, Janet said something about, the waiting list and, just having to get so sick in many instances before you're helped, which is not good, because it probably could mean that the transplant might not be as successful if you're very sick.
Well, there are currently about 114,000 Americans waiting for a life-saving transplant, and nearly 10,000 of them are here in New York. And unfortunately, every day people are dying waiting for a transplant. We desperately need more donors. We need people to hear Janet's story and be inspired and register as donors. One donor can save up to 8 lives and enhance and save up to 50 through tissue donation. And it's an incredible legacy to leave behind. Like Janet said, all these incredible milestones in her family's life she was able to live to see because of a selfless organ donor.
So it's important, I think you said your organ donor had registered.
Yes, she had.
And maybe some people have and some people haven't. But it is important to register, because I would assume that will facilitate the organ donation sooner, even if there might have to be a discussion later on. But
absolutely.
So so if you are in that car accident and you are registered, then how does that process all work?
Sure. So to begin with, I encourage everyone to have a conversation with their family now about what they think about organ donation, if they want to donate, if they're registered, because that will make it all easier on the darkest day. If you do sign up and you register as an organ donor and you pass away, you will become a donor. If you are viable, you will save up to 8 lives and have this incredible legacy. If you are not registered and you are deemed a suitable potential donor, your family will be approached in the hospital about the possibility of donation and you giving these selfless gifts. And it's a really hard day for anyone to lose someone they love. So we really, as I said, encourage people to discuss it beforehand to make it a little bit clearer for your family if they're ever faced with that question. But the best thing to do is, if you want to donate, is register now. So
Right. Well, it goes in line with, we have a will. You should have a
Exactly.
will where you're going to leave your money and so on, or what you want to have done with your children and so on. Who's to
different
take
kind of
care
future
them.
planning.
Right, future planning, and this is really a part of future planning.
Absolutely. And I can't speak enough to the legacy, not only helping people like Janet, but I work with a lot of the families of donors, and they often talk about how comforting it is in this really terrible tragedy where they've lost someone they love, to know that that person is living on and helping others achieve incredible things and go back to work and spend time with their family and continue to live on, all because of their gift.
Now, I have met some people that have gotten a donation, but they have met the families. I mean, you had some communication, but some have physically met the families. Does that happen very often?
It does happen from time to time, and it is facilitated through the organ procurement organization, LiveOn New York, and the Transplant Center, where both families can write letters, and if they agree to meet, then it will be facilitated. And I've had the honor of sitting in on some of those meetings, and they are so emotional and so moving. I actually last week sat in on one where a wife listened with a stethoscope to hear her husband's heartbeat in somebody else's chest, and there was not a dry eye in the house. She was,
oh my goodness, I'm starting to tear right
yes.
now.
Well, she kept saying my husband was a hero, and he absolutely was. He saved this man who had 3 children and 6 grandchildren, and he made a choice to let that man live on, and it was really beautiful.
Yeah. And recipients never forget their donors. I've never met a recipient who doesn't think about it. I know that it's been 20 years since I received my transplant, but there's not a day that goes by that at some point I just will say thank you in some way, because I'll think of her and I'll think about everything that I gained and everything that she lost, but the wonderful legacy that she left behind,
Well, you can be a donor now.
Yes, I am a donor.
Right,
I'm
you are a
registered.
donor. You're registered as a donor. So
absolutely.
it just kind of like travels on.
Absolutely.
But so what's wrong with New York State? We passed a lot of legislation.
Yes.
Maybe we can talk about some of the things to try to encourage people, like 16 and 17-year-olds now.
That was a really big moment for New York State. The age for registration was lowered to 16. So now when kids are first in the DMV for their permit and driver's license, they have the option to check that box to save a life. And we find this millennial generation, altruism is very natural for them. It's in their blood. So they are very in support of organ donation and registering. What we are really working toward at LiveOn New York and across New York is more portals to registering. We know that 90% of New Yorkers, more than 90% support donation, but only 35% are registered. So we're always trying to make it easier. So while you can register at the DMV, if you get an ID NYC card, you're also asked the question. If you're on the Health Benefits Exchange, you get asked the question. I know there is proposed legislation to have it asked on all SUNY and CUNY library cards. So when people are faced with the question, they tend to say yes. It's just something they're not thinking about when they're walking
Well, the
around.
question basically says, would you like to donate?
Correct.
Or let me think about it later. I can't remember how we ended up.
Yes.
It's yes or not at this time.
Not at this
Exactly.
time, because we
Yes.
didn't want I know for a while we had, do you want to register or you don't want to register? We didn't want people to think about not registering.
Exactly. Just
So-
take a beat and think about it, and we'll get you later.
Right. So we have, I know I try, that's why I'm doing this program, so that we encourage more people to go out and register. I think we have information about how to register that we can
Yes.
put up on our program, so
And
people
New
will
York
know.
State launched a new very fancy up to speed online registry about a year and a half ago. So it takes less than 2 minutes. You go on, you fill it out, and you never have to think about it again.
Right. I think when I registered, I probably downloaded something and I put it in paper and mailed it.
Yes, it used
Could
to
that
be a
be?
little
It
bit
was
more
a long time.
complicated, but now you just fill it out and click the button, and you're good to go.
Right. And when you do it with the DMV, they have a little, when you get your license plate, I mean your driver's license, you have a little heart
the little
on
heart
the
on it,
side.
yes.
Right, which means you're a donor.
It's incredible.
So I know somebody walked in my office yesterday and we were talking about the program and, the importance of organ donation. And they said, "Oh, we haven't registered yet. My wife hasn't registered." So off went 2 forms
Fantastic.
to fill out, and hopefully, you're right. I think it's people want to do it, but they just don't have it right in front of them. Maybe.
There's so much going on in everyone's life, and it is really scary to think about death and to think about the end. So I think sometimes it's not top of mind, or folks avoid it, or they have certain misconceptions or misunderstandings about donation. So we work really hard with a team of volunteers like Janet to hit the streets and talk to people and tell them, the truth about donation and why it's so important.
And when people register, it's so funny because I'm out in the community registering people, and I ask them, are you registered? When they are, they say, "Oh yes, I'm registered. I have a heart on my license. Let me show you." And they always reach for the card and look.
Right. So they're very proud
So
of
they're
that
very
they've
proud
done
of
that.
doing it.
So what kind of registration? What happens during the year? I know April is kind of the focus of organ donation, but it really needs to be the focus all year round.
Well, April is Donate Life Month, and then the other big day here in New York is in October, something called Organ Donor Enrollment Day, where we get hundreds of volunteers all over the city, Long Island, the lower Hudson Valley, to table and educate everybody that we can come in contact with. And we register thousands of people that day. I know, Janet, you can maybe speak to it a little bit. You've been a really big player in that.
This year we worked with Sandy, and we worked with the town of Ossining, and we had an event where we were at about 7 different sites, including the prison, the police precinct, community centers all over the town of Ossining. And we had volunteers from the Transplant Support Organization, most of them transplant recipients, who spent the day at these different sites registering people to be organ donors. And I understand
There was an
Yes.
award given to the
Yes.
town of
Yes.
Ossining, right?
The most registrations of any municipality on Organ Donor Enrollment Day 2018. So
That
we're really
is-
proud of you guys.
That is terrific. I know Dana Levenberg, who's supervisor, the town of Ossining, was so excited to get that. And but it only happened with a whole lot of people working within the community. Now, is that an effort? I'm sure that Ossining will do it again next year because it's constant. But are other communities picking up on it also, or do we need to inspire them to do the same
Well,
thing?
we need to inspire and get the word out. Transplant Support Organization can provide the volunteers, and we'll be the manpower out on the field, but we need the support of the towns or the organizations in the community to include us and to, work with us to develop the events throughout the counties.
And we are everywhere. We set up at drugstores, subway stations, schools. So anyone who's interested should raise their hand. We'd be happy to have them.
Right, yeah. So, are there, we talk about people of different ages that often I find with seniors, because I know at my senior forums I actually had a senior from Rockland County come who'd gotten a heart, I think it was at that point. And just to show that everybody needs some kind of transplant, and seniors can also donate their bodies or potentially I don't know about their individual parts. I guess you can, kidneys, you don't need to, right?
No, you don't need 2 kidneys. That's something where you can actually be a living donor. If you're so moved, you can donate a kidney to someone you know in need, or become what we call an altruistic donor, where you just call a transplant center and say, I want to help. And then you can maybe start a kidney chain or something like that to help other folks. Living donors can do kidney and liver. The rest are deceased donors, so that's where you need to register in advance. But you're speaking about age. That's a really big misconception about organ donation. A lot of people that we come across, seniors, like, oh, I'm too old. You don't want my organs, but that's not true. Let the doctors make that decision. A couple of years back, we had a 93-year-old liver transplanted here in New York, because the liver is an incredible organ that can regenerate itself. So we want everybody to sign up and let the doctors decide if you're a candidate or not.
Right, because some people think, they have cancer or something like that, and they're not really sure. But again, it's back to the doctors making that decision.
Absolutely.
And you'd mentioned before some about people that have been in a fire, been burned, and whatever. That calls for a
Tissue
lot
donation is incredible, and a lot of folks that have severe burns require skin grafts in order to survive. So if you are a tissue donor, so it goes beyond the organs. If you're a tissue donor, you can save lives that way as well.
And I've heard that firemen are one of the biggest recipients of the tissues because they're out fighting fires.
They're fighting fires,
so
yeah. And they end up in our burn center in the Westchester Medical Center. So many. I mean, that's a prime burn center for the whole state. So it's really important. So how do we? We've got to get from the bottom state. It's incredible because you're saying 1/10 of the need really is in New York State for organs, and yet we're number 50 in the percentage of people that are registered. Did I say it right?
You did, and I should say we're making some major strides. 2018, we had the biggest registration numbers we've ever seen. More than 600,000 New Yorkers signed up. So now more than 5.5 million New Yorkers are registered as donors, which is more than the population of 27 states. So we have a lot of people here supporting, but it's only 35% of our overall population. So that's why doing events like this and community events like Janet and her team are doing are so important.
So are we different than other states?
I think something that makes New York incredible is the diversity. We have people here from all over the world, from different backgrounds, and it's the fiber of the city and our area. But it does present a challenge that people have different misconceptions and have learned different things about organ donation that maybe are not true to how it is conducted in America. So a big part of our job is trying to educate and dispel any myths and misconceptions that people may have. I think that is a little bit unique to New York.
And the language barriers, because we have so many countries represented in New York, so it becomes difficult sometimes to, pass on the information.
More than 200 languages in New York City alone.
Right, and so it's getting to the organizations and so on that might be helping people.
And we're constantly partnering with community centers in different parts of the city, churches, houses of worship, to really kind of educate people and have them then disseminate that information amongst their neighbors.
Can we do anything in the area of insurance as a way to get people to sign up? Is that something that's being explored?
So something that I believe is unique to New York is if you go on the New York Health Benefits Exchange to get your insurance, you are asked the organ donation question. So that happened, I believe, a year ago, and that's a great way to do it. But like I said, we are always looking for more portals, new ways to get in front of people. And something LiveOn New York is really committed to is education at the high school level. So we have a unit of study we've worked on with DOE and New York schools to have sophomores and juniors learn about organ donation as part of their science classes.
Right, and you're saying that they are signing up at a good
rate.
They
are, and we want them to have all the facts when they're asked that question. If you're 16 and you've never heard of this, it's probably a scary thing. So if we can educate them on what donation is, how it works, and how they can make a difference, we're happy to do it.
And actually, young people going home and talking with their parents,
it trickles up.
It trickles up. I mean, they did that in a lot of other fields. So saying, why aren't you on the list, and so on. So are churches and temples and other organizations, do do they kind of focus in? Do you try to get them focused in
We
with
do.
their
So November we
members?
celebrate Donor Sabbath, where we really partner with the houses of worship on sermons. On we have quilts made in honor of donors. We display them, newsletter pamphlets, tables of registration at the back of the house of worship, and we really try to talk to all of the religious leaders and ask them to relay the importance of this to their followers.
That's
We,
great.
we speak at the synagogues, the different churches. We go during the services. A lot of times the pastors will let us come up to the pulpit and talk about organ donation and our experiences. And
Actually, you know, I've seen that. I think it was in Putnam with new citizens, people that became new citizens, and it was in the courtroom in Putnam that they did have somebody that came, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. So somebody's become a new citizen, and now we're trying to be sure that they are also an organ donor. I thought that was a
Actually,
really good.
I have a partner from a Transplant Support Organization. He and I take turns speaking at every single naturalization ceremony. So we've been doing that for we're going on 3 years, I think.
Oh,
now.
that was the first time I'd seen it. So that's great. That is really reaching out.
Something else unique to New York is when you register to vote, you're also asked the organ donation question. So when you become a new citizen, there's a table there to register to vote. So we try to have people like Janet there to give the background on donation.
So you're there, people have the registration for voting, right, and then
You
just
can check the
have this
box.
pamphlet. So give us more information as we conclude about where to go to get
Absolutely.
more information about your organization and how to register.
For more information and to register, people can visit liveonny.org. That's our website. We have a really easy to read FAQ, frequently asked questions. We have a hotline on there. You can call if you have questions. I mean, I think the biggest takeaway from this, I hope, is to sign up to be an organ donor and save someone like Janet, who's had 20 more years of life because of
And
this.
many, many more to come.
Absolutely.
No, that is wonderful, and I just thank you for all of your wonderful work, and you must feel very proud, both of you, of the people that you have helped save their lives and kept families intact and made such a wonderful contribution
And thank
to
you for your
society.
support. You've been a
Absolutely.
wonderful supporter of this
For
cause.
many years.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I put it up on my website. It's over there in
We
the corner
appreciate
because I haven't needed an organ donated to me, but I know a lot of my constituents do.
Yes.
And I kind of grieve with them as they are going through like the 12-year wait period and so
Yes.
on, and it's really hard. So we just need people's help when somebody has passed away in whatever situation that their organs can be used. So I want to thank you both so very much.
Thank you for having
It
us.
was great to have you here. And I want to thank the audience. If you have any questions at all about Live On New York, please go up on their website or call me at 914-941-1111. If you need any information, I'll send it right in the mail to you, and you can become registered on the organ donation list. It's a matter of saving people's lives. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good evening.